Okay, how's it guys? How's it going, guys? Peshcats here, and today I'm going to be talking about the restrictions for Monogatari series. And with me today, I have lycheepunnet from Top Tier Tiers, and Rex Lau, the Salt Hermit, who you
They
guys have seen his brother running around foreign. You guys want to say hi?
Hello.
I definitely wasn't coerced into coming here. I promise.
Okay, so for today's video, like I said, we're going to be discussing the restrictions to Monogatari series, specifically how it was used, since Rex and I don't really know what we're doing with Monogatari, and how it's going to affect the deck, and hopefully Lychee can give us some insight, a little bit of insight more than we had before, which was almost nothing, on both of those things. So first, real quick, let's just take a look at both the cards. So on the left, we have the 3/2 Mayoi. So she has a come and play heal, and come into play, give a strange character 1 soul and a cancel burn. And at the start of the encore step, she gets sent to memory, so she can give the +1 soul and the cancel burn to herself as well. And the other card is the middle school student Shinobu, which is come into play, gets +15 for the turn, and when another strange character is being front attacked, you can pay 1 and then sack herself to bounce the attack target back to your hand. So these two cards are on a choose 1 of 2, so you can only run one of them in your deck, and if you run one of them, you cannot run the other at all. So first off, let's talk about how the deck used each of these two cards before. So if you'd like to say anything, just go ahead and jump in.
Sure. Monogatari was a deck with a pretty good engine, and the Shinobu was part of that engine. So what the card did was effectively deny on reverse stuff. So in the mid game, you would slap it in either the back row or the front row, and if you put it in the back row, your opponent can't reverse whatever you decide to bounce back, and therefore they can't get their 1/0 combo off. Or you put it in the front row and limit them to like 1 reverse total, which is the Shinobu itself. So if they attack the Shinobu first, get that first reverse, but as soon as they try to attack something else, you sack the Shinobu and limit them to just the 1+. You might have a third row or whatever, but I usually didn't. So that is a sort of plus, because the Shinobu was going to die anyway, and you get to bounce back one of a number of good cards with come and play effects, and you get to reuse them. Chief among them being the Azusa or Akatsuki effect on a 1/0, as well as a 0/0 come and play top check ditch. It's a Ernanoki, really underrated card, but anyway, yeah, that's like the engine at level 1. So you sometimes deny them some pluses, and other times you get your own pluses from making use of the Shinobu that was going to die anyway. And at late game, it's basically a preemptive sack counter that lets you reuse cards like the Hanekawa Clock Kick or the Bake Heal. And in very strange circumstances, you get to sack counter or bounce back to hand your other 3/2 mainstays, and from there you get to deny clock kicks. You get to deny on reverse crap like the Milky Holmes card. This is all like level 1 stuff. It's pretty obvious what these cards do. It's not quite as obvious why this card is on the list, and that's simply because it's one of the defining features of the card. This feature is, well, this profile is on like 3 cards total in Weiss, and the other 2 sets are nigh irrelevant. Well, I won't say nigh irrelevant, because Log Horizon is kind of relevant, but it doesn't need it. This card, it doesn't have room on the field or in the deck. Whereas Monogatari didn't really run back row, so to speak, up until level 2 or 3. Plus, it's just good color fixing for yellow. It's a decent turn 1 play because it's a 3k, and yeah, it just makes the opponent think before they slap down 3 climax combos and a climax, because that's one of the strongest things you can do. And since you're denying that, it's just a really good part of the so-called engine, especially when you're reusing common play effects. That's why they hit this Shinobu. I'm personally not a bigger fan of this Shinobu as most people are, but I still think it's the choice going forward.
Okay, so as far as the Mayoi, so um, I what I was thinking when I first saw the choose one of two list was you have a card, the 3/2 Mayoi, who gives you a heal and a little bit of like finishing power, and then at the same time it takes itself off the field at the end of the turn. So what I thought as like an outside perspective was that the Mayoi and the Shinobu were like kind of making, oh, like obviously the Shinobu is relevant at like pretty much all stages of the game, but the having both of them taking a part in your late game, like at level 3, then that would be a way to not only force your opponent to swing higher, I guess, like the spot where like the Mayoi left the field, but also to prevent on reverse and for like on your opponent's on reverse finishers. And I'm not totally sure like how relevant that is for the level 3 game, but that was kind of what that was kind of the first thing that came to my mind.
That's definitely part of it. Definitely part of it. The other thing that a lot of people don't quite appreciate about the Shinobu interaction is that Monogatari can loop heals. There's a lot of lists in Japan ran the one of Girl Who Met a Crab, or the 1 to 2 of what's her name? Master-servant relationship.
Shinobu?
Misamono heal. And
that's the
yeah,
hexproof
Shinobu,
heal, right?
the teenager Shinobu. Yeah, the hexproof heal. So not only is it hexproof, but unlike Mayoi, it stays on the field, so you can bounce it back and loop heals if your opponent fronts into it, which they are likely to do. And there is no other enormously dangerous on-reverse thing happening. Like, a lot of the good finishes nowadays aren't even on reverse. You've got Power of Smile Rin, which I think you covered in the last video. You've got Yami and Al, obviously. And you have all the various Musashi clones. And, well, I guess that only really applies to LB, because I don't think Musashi's super good unless you're the anti-heal. Oh, yeah, Kankole as well. What am I talking about?
Yeah.
Anyway, the reason why Shinobu's good in the late game is partially sack counter, partially heal loop. But that brings me to Mayoi, who is... okay. So, to understand why Mayoi is absurdly good, you have to kind of understand the game plan of Monogatari. And the game plan of Monogatari is to get the, excuse me, the 3/2 advanced summon Shinobu, the one that's got on damage scry, onto the field ASAP. It's a 12.5 hexproof that can only ever be removed by basically, I guess it's literally Centero, Tri-Primus Rin.
Getting beat over by pretty much shit.
Yeah. You need literally like Trancing Pulse Rin or one of the self 4Ks from like Girlfriend Beta or whatever, or you need an anti-change
suicider.
Like, yes, like a suicider that kills an anti-change. Those are the only things that can deal with Shinobu. Anti-change counters don't work. And she gets you all of this excess value by scrying dead cards or damage cards into the bin instead of taking them as damage. Now, you want to keep these Shinobus on the field for basically the rest of the game. Like, your ideal field is 2 Shinobu and then 1 empty slot. That empty slot was ideally Mayoi, because not only does she heal, but she is a effectively hexproof finisher, because you can give the extra soul to one of your Shinobus, and then that Shinobu, if it swings into a occupied row, it becomes either 3 damage or 1 damage, and your opponent can't use money counter on it, and the only counterplay is literally the Uzuki anti-damage counter thingy bob, the one that doesn't target, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's the reason that Mayoi is so good is not only because she's a heal and a finisher for deck building purposes, like she does all these things in the deck building rubric, she also only takes up 1 slot on the field in order to both heal and finish, which very few other cards in the history of Weiss do. And whenever a card like that does do that, it's super notable, like Misakuro, Pumpkin. All these cards have seen huge amounts of play because they do both things. So Mayoi being able to do that in a deck which hopefully has 2 front row spaces filled with a level 3 that you don't ever want to move out of there, means that you can heal, you can press finishing power all in the one slot, and it even goes away. So your opponent hasn't got a good clock kick target since your other two slots are freaking huge.
Okay.
That's why Mayoi was, like an obvious auto include. It does so many things, both in the deck and in terms of, I guess, card economy, in terms of putting as many functions as you can onto a card. And yeah, that's why they hit it, because it's a heal that also helped finish, and it was a no-brainer 2 to 4 of in every single deck.
All right. Rex, do you have any input on these two cards, like as far as an outside opinion? Or how about let's move on to like between the two, which of the two you think is like the better play? So we'll start with me and Rex, I guess, because we're the outside opinion, and then we'll get Lychee. So Rex, you want to start?
Anyway, so you guys go.
Man, I don't know, man. I don't know.
That's a super reasonable response. A lot of Monogatari players are up in arms about it as well. It's actually quite a.
It's super difficult to choose between because both of them are so good, but then and running both of them is reasonable. And running like either one is reasonable.
Okay, so I guess I'll give my input then. So I was talking a bit with Mike Chang about which way he would go, because he played Monogatari for a little bit when the second series set came out, and what he was telling me was that he would go with probably the middle school student Shinobu, the 0-0, because it still fulfills an important role throughout the early game, and at the same time, by keeping it in your deck, so like Lychee said, like if your ideal field was to have 2 copies of the top deck Scry Shinobu, and then you have like 1 Mayoi, then you can fill like a similar sort of like field role by playing like just like any other healer. So like let's say you play your hexproof Shinobu healer from Nisei, or you play the Bake Hitagi healer, and then if they were to come after that card as like a clock hit target, then that's where you use your like middle school student Shinobu. You sack it, you put it back into your hand, and then like you said, the only thing they have left to have as a target would be these Shinobus, which are like 12/5. At the same time, you're losing out on the cancel burn element that the Mayoi gives, but you're able to continue like the late game value. You can keep the top check scries, you can keep playing healers, and that was the reasoning he gave me as to why he thought Shinobu would be the better choice. So, any thoughts?
No, that's decent. I think I respect that argument. That's a lot of what my personal argument is as well. But I'll let you keep going, because I do have a bunch to talk about. It's a very interesting restriction list, I'll say that much.
Okay.
I still don't know. Like, the guy that played Gatorade against me in the finals, I asked him about it, and I think he said he's also gonna keep in middle school Shinobu. I didn't ask him in depth, but I'm pretty sure it's also the reasons of what you guys said. Yeah.
Okay, so something I kind of wanted to bring up that I noticed, because I was looking at a few JP lists, and mind you, Lychee, I know how much you criticize like what JP players play, but what I noticed.
Oh, the list is sometimes fine. I just don't like the general meta. Anyway,
okay.
Go on.
Okay. So, anyways, something that I noticed from looking at some of the lists was recent increase in use of the 2/2 Hanekawa over the 2/2 to 3/2 Shinobu. So the Hanekawa, that's the one with the gold bar combo that lets you put
it's a gold bar combo.
Yeah, 2 strange characters from waiting room into stock when you play the climax, I believe. And so people were playing that over the 2/2 to 3/2 Shinobu change for the top checks, and then they also were not running that 3/2 top check Shinobu, and were instead playing something like Mayoi's plus insert healers here, and then like Hanekawa clock kick. So as far as like the argument earlier about like you want to have like two Shinobus and you want to have like third slot could be like a Mayoi. So in a build like this, how would you address like the difference in the build or playstyle?
Well, it all depends on the level one. Like some of those builds ran the 2/1 advanced summon Hitagi, which comes down early if you have a green, 2 green and 2 red. And if you're running a card like that, then of course you probably want to play level 3 Mayoi because you don't really have anything good to bounce back at level 1. Your cards are huge, and Mayoi, regardless of whether you have two Shinobus or not, is just a really good above average card. And you have sat counters as well. So regarding that sort of build, I think you definitely, if you're splashing for the third color for yellow, you play Mayoi. Otherwise, I don't think you need either of them, to be quite honest. If you are running the 1-0 Gahara Azusa, as I call it, then yeah, you can run the middle school Shinobu, but I'm not convinced it's that good of a card. And I'm somebody who's played this profile ever since, like, Persona 4 animation came out. Like, it's been a long time since I've played this card. I've played this card for a long time. I'm well aware of what it does. I still don't think that's correct. So the 2/2 Hanekawa is a super comfy card. Like, when you play it, it is so comfortable. It feels so good to put clean cards into stock. But I don't actually think it's amazing unless you have the 2/1 change to field swap aside, which is from Nisemono, and which is a criminally underplayed card, mind you.
Which card is this? This is a...
And yeah, so it's a Karen. It's got an Encore phase change to a 3/2 Karen, which is effectively 11k, and it has discard to field swap.
Okay, I'm gonna look for that while you continue.
Sure. So it's not as impressive as the Little Busters Twins one, but it is super strong because field swapping is just ridiculous. You turn all your opponent's attacks into bad attacks. Without that sort of card, I don't think 2/2 Hanekawa is nearly as good as just having a 12.5k, which needs to be answered or else it gets enormous amount of value. And I sort of lost track of the original question. But those builds probably would rather...
Oh yeah, so Hanekawa builds, like, what direction do you go, I guess, would be the original question.
What direction do you go?
I mean, like in terms of like the... So you say you would think that, like, the Hanekawa build would go neither?
I don't think it needs either. If it had to choose one, both are pretty defensible. Depends on how you play and what your level 1 game is.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to build the green-red deck. You've got lots of good options at level 1. You've got 107Ks, you've got 106.5s, you've got the 2/1 advanced summon, you've got obviously the Gahara Azusa, you've got a stock charger, you've got so many different things you can do. It's really dependent on whether or not you have back row space, whether or not you want to derive value, and how strongly you feel about the 0/0 Shinobu's bounce back effect.
Okay.
Which I think is strong, but not worth warping an entire deck around.
Well, as far as addressing like some of the things about the level 1 game and the question of like having space in the back row, the same builds that I saw running the 2/2 Hanekawa, some of the cards that they were running for the lower level game were, I think, I actually think they dropped like level 1 combo altogether, and they were playing and I also think they were not playing the Ricky clone Mayoi, and I think it was something like four gates, 4 bars.
I mean, not playing the Ricky clone Mayoi is just a mistake. Monogatari does not get that much advantage, especially if you also drop the 1/0 combo. Like, you'll be spamming brainstorms or spamming clock bonds for days if you do that, and that's not very good. Especially when your clock bond isn't even to a card that can be spammed out in multiples and is costless. Dropping the Ricky is a mistake. You want at least 2 to 3 of them at the very least. I think 4 is probably correct. And
What, for the Ricky?
yeah,
All right, let me take a look
like
at
you
like
want to be playing that card.
let me take a look at what else they were running so I can get an idea of like the whole picture. Um,
They'd probably be running like 3 Brainstorm, some number of Ononoki, and then whether or not they're playing the 2-1 advance, some they might be running like 2 of the Bond. It really varies, but removing a Ricky from a deck without a good reason to do so is generally incorrect. Like, people kept telling me that Triad Primus or Primus or whatever before the ban list didn't run Ricky. I think that's probably a mistake. You wanted at least 2 to 3, I think. And some people say they weren't even running Kome, which is a complete mistake.
all right, so I think I
I
found
think
like
you run Ricky without this.
I think I found a list that like kind of reflects the sort of. Actually, yeah, this is pretty much exactly the type of build that I was talking about. So it was like for level 3 game, it ran Mayoi and Hitagi, and then that was it. 2/2 Hanekawas, it ran a set. 4 gold bars, 4 gates, no level 1 combo by the looks of it. It ran Hitagi Azusa clone, level 1, and it ran 1/0 Kambaru Suicider. I guess as a way to get value.
Surely it has more than that.
That was the.
I mean, if you're running Kaiki,
It has. Oh wait, what is this? Okay, it has a level 1 Hachikuji, and I can't. I
it's a
can't
6/5,
remember
I'm
what
sure.
it is.
I'm sure it's just a 6/5.
It looks. It's the one where she's like sleeping, or it looks like she's sleeping.
Oh, that's a. Wait, what?
That's
Yellow?
a global 5. Oh, it's an Akashi clone.
That's yeah, it's Akashi. Why is he splashing yellow for that?
That's weird.
And then
I do not.
There's no
Okay.
there's no reason for Gatorade to run that.
and then the zero line.
You don't need it.
Let's see. The 0 line is 4 of the middle schooler Shinobu. Kambaru level 0 Suicider. So he ran the level 1 Suicider and the level 0 Suicider. 4 copies of the 0/0 Shinobu and Koyomi from the new set. That's like a global 5 and experience drop
4
1.
copies.
4 copies and the drop 1 deck
That's
search.
certainly wrong.
And then
You know,
for green.
that's-
And then for
that's
green
almost
fix,
certainly-
the Koyomi Mill 3 send to stock on opponent's climax play. And then like
Climax.
2 brainstorms. With no
seems
with
reasonable.
no Ricky. And one copy
that seems-
copy of 2/2 salvage.
no Ricky's a mistake. No matter how you
Yeah.
look at it, yeah.
So
No,
this is,
Ricky's is just a mistake.
so this is obviously just an example build. So like this doesn't reflect like everything that people are running. But
No, that's a mistake. That's just actually a mistake. You can probably get some amount of advantage, but you're very, very reliant on having middle schooler Shinobus to just bounce back all your stuff and repeatedly play them. And if you ever get countered in GG, you probably have 3 cards in hand ever. I'm not convinced that's a very good build at all, but we'll move on anyway. That sort of deck, if you're running Gahara Azusa, then middle schooler Shinobu is always a consideration, because being able to replay that effect is obscene. Like, it's just not fair. Especially when that card can also be buffed by the Kambaru Bomb to become a 7k attacker, which is also pretty insane.
wait, what is the which the level 0 Suicider.
Yeah, the Kambaru Bomb gives 2k to a character experience.
Yeah, because I was thinking the level 1 one because they're running that too.
I mean, that's also pseudo advantage, but god damn, if you're relying on that, then there's lots of things wrong with you.
Personally, I'm having like a hard time visualizing it myself, but I mean, like, if it works, I guess it works.
I don't think it works.
I would
really don't
I would
think it
probably
works.
have to see it myself.
Yeah, look, anyway. What I think going forward is that there's arguments for both sides. I think that people who advocate for Shinobu are looking at the bigger picture, because it is the card that has given Monogatari its identity. It is entirely irreplaceable. It is not a card you can replace. Like, at level 1, you don't have a way to reuse Gahara Azusas without it, because your salvage your salvage cards are mediocre at best and require you to drop a climax.
Or their gates.
Or their gates, or
Yeah.
you have to hit the combo and get another copy. But I think most decks run 3 copies, maybe 4, so not necessarily going to happen. Middle Schooler lets you reuse those with consistency. It gives you color fixing, gives you a good level 0 play, and it serves as a functional sack counter at both level 1 and level 3 if that's what you wish. It's not a card that many series have access to, and therefore if you value Monogatari and its individuality and its effectiveness as a tournament deck, you'll probably be thinking of keeping this card because this card is what makes Monogatari Monogatari as far as I'm concerned. It's a card that you can argue to play more copies of than Ricky because it's so integral to getting you mid-game advantage and allowing you to reuse your obscenely powerful common play effects. I'm personally on the Shinobu side. I think that it's probably the card to keep at 3 to 4 copies. You still play the 3 to 4 Ricky. And if you're playing Monogatari, you're doing so because you want to abuse the repeated common play effects that Middle School Shinobu gives you, as well as the 2/2 advanced summon to the 3/2 Shinobu. Now, on that note, the card that best synergizes with the 3/2 Shinobu advanced summon is 100% the Mayoi.
This Mayoi, 100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the 3/2 Mayoi. It is 100% the choice if you are just trying to maximize your end game for obvious reasons. Because while the 0/0/0 is irreplaceable at level 0, it is somewhat replaceable at level 3. Well, there's like a storm brewing somewhere.
Yeah.
I guess it's somewhat replaceable at level 3 because you have an actual sack counter, and it is also somewhat replaceable because you can just play power counters, which stop your opponent from reversing stuff. The thing is, Mayoi does everything super efficiently. She's a heal, she pushes finishes, she's a preemptive sack counter, and she only takes up like 3 to 4 slots in your deck. And yeah, she's just really good. She even fixes for your 3/2 Shinobu. Now the thing is, all of her individual functions can be replaced to a degree. So you can replace the heal with either the Nisemono heal or the Girl Who Met a Crab, which decks were already running because they were targets for the 0/0 Shinobu to bounce back. You can replace the finishing element with the 3/2 clock kick. You can't replace it with the gate combo, and I'll explain why in a bit, but you can replace it with a clock kick, especially if you're going to splash into green to play Kaiki.
I'd imagine
your opponent.
I'd imagine like not replacing it with the like 3/2 Hitagi is because you, I think I read you say it somewhere before, like Reddit or something, but it was because like the Hitagi you gain value off having multiple copies on the field to best make use of the fact that it's a climax combo, but you want to have Shinobus on your field at the same time. I believe
Yeah, that's the thing. You can't have multiples. Yeah, you're not going to get the burst power. Like, going back a long time, the Haruhi level 3, Trouble Girl Haruhi, was only bullshit because, oh, well, I'm sorry, you can't get monetized anymore, I swear. The Hitagi level 3, not Hitagi, the Haruhi level 3 was only good because you could tri-field it, heal 3, and then suddenly, boom,
Burn 3.
they're taking 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. That's really scary. That's a heap of damage. The same goes for Sinon. Sinon as a single copy is pretty ass. Like,
But
you're
two or
shooting
more.
for 4 once. Yeah, you need 2 or more for you to have that chance at the Hail Mary. Just having 1 kind of sucks. And the exact same is true of the 3/2 Hitagi. Not only does 1 3/2 Hitagi only dig you 2 cards deep, so you need to have the climax before or sack it in the top 2. You only get 1 ping off of effective neg 1 to hand, and playing a climax means that you have you don't get a 2 soul swing if you want the 2 soul swing, which is a pretty big deal. 2 is a good number in the end game. Whereas with Mayoi, what you get to do is you get to have as many up to 2 soul swings pretty easily, and then you can have the third one go on a character directing, and then you have a pretty much guaranteed 1. So you get a really nice 2-2-1, or you can have a 2-3, 2-3-2. You can do things really. You can organize your damage really well. That's what Mayoi does. Hitagi does not do that. Hitagi makes it 3-3-1-3. While that's fine, it's not nearly as good as having the overall flexibility.
And it's
And
also,
that's why
yeah,
you can't just replace it with two copies of Huggy.
and it's also just like, because this card can you give targeted soul, so it's like you said, it's more flexible for your end game, which is better.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also better with well, I don't know about. It's just more flexible. That's the end point, because you still haven't played a climax on top of this. You can just give the extra soul to a 1 soul beater and move that up if you have to. So there's a lot more flexibility involved, and I think that's very valuable. In addition to the whole thing where you get to heal and you get to go to memory and all of that. If you want to maximize Shinobu, then Mayoi is where you look. You aren't actually sacrificing too much if you don't value the bounce back effect significantly. I've talked to a couple players that are proponents of this. They don't value the bounce back as much as, say, I don't value it that high, but I think it's an integral part of Monogatari's identity. And if you want to keep playing a similar style of deck that has just a Shinobu sitting in the back, and your opponent is just thinking, how are they going to take their turn when your opponent has a preemptive sack counter that's going to bounce back a character which will come back with a vengeance next turn. That's a pretty big part of playing against Monogatari, in my opinion.
All right, so
And Shinobu offers that, Mayoi does not.
all right, so that pretty much sums it up then,
I'm done.
right? Did you have anything else?
If you want a better top end,
I don't have anything to
no,
add
not
on.
really. Like, if you want a better top end, you pick Mayoi. If you want like a more mid-rangey sort of dance, you want to dance a bit more in the mid game, then you go for Shinobu. And I think that's where you get to outplay your opponents. And I think that's pretty valuable in a game like Weiss.
Yeah.
All right, so pretty much like there you have it. Long story short, if you want the like mid game, the mid game tricks, you go for the Shinobu. If you want that little bit of extra late game punch, just because of how flexible it is and how well it synergizes with other cards, you can go for the Mayoi. Ultimately, though,
keep in mind that keep in mind Shinobu is actually good in the late game as well.
Oh,
like,
right, yeah,
to bounce
because
back.
it's one pay one sack
so
counter that like basically puts a healer back in your hand. So okay, so the Shinobu is like pretty much relevant at pretty much all points of the game, and the Mayoi gives you a little bit of offense. So if that's what you're looking for, then you can pick that.
I mean, yeah. Shinobu is also like a form of offense though, because it's like. How do I
She is
say?
a 3K.
3-5.
Not in that type of offense, but as in like.
I know. I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
the bounce back. Oh my god!
I get flashbacks just thinking of the
Well, like you said, you can bounce back the Hanakawa
it
clock kick.
feels good.
yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah. You can also bounce. You can bounce back anything with a good come in play effect. Like, you can quite safely put something like the Ononoki come in play
Top check.
top discard
Yeah.
in the front row. Yeah. So yeah, comes into play, top checks, and you get to discard. Then you give 1/5 to something if you need a bit of extra punch. You can put something like that in the front row safely if you have a middle school Shinobu in the back row. Because unless they can snipe level zeros, there's no way that they can stop you from just bouncing that back to your hand and denying that easy reverse.
Yeah.
So it offers you safety in the late game, and it offers you heal loops in the late game, if that's what you want to do. It just doesn't offer you that flexibility and punch that Mayoi does.
Yeah. I agree.
Oh, okay, so now we've pretty much summed it up, right? I think
Yeah.
we've talked about like pretty much.
Yeah. I'm on
Almost
Team
everything.
Shinobu.
So you're on Team
Same.
Shinobu, Rex? Shinobu?
Yeah. Same.
I think just like
I mean, this discussion summed it up for me. So yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I think like having been given like all the information that I have over like this discussion, as well as some talks I've had with other players, I think Shinobu, for the most part, is the right choice, because it gives the deck like just a completely different way to function, whereas like Mayoi, it gives like your end game a slightly different way to function.
Mayoi turns you into like an upgraded to Love Root aliens, whereas Shinobu turns you into a completely different deck with a completely different identity, which I think is very valuable.
All right. Well, there
I
you
still
have
think the
it.
deck is like top 10, maybe top 10, not easily top 10.
I was surprised like how much people were like going XO with it, like with those graphs. Like I don't know how big the sample size is with that, but like
I
it
think it was,
is.
When
I
the
think it
only
was
other
like
decks-
surpassed. Well, yeah.
When the only other things you're playing are other Monogatari decks, that tends to happen.
I mean, like it
Yeah.
was like
I
There
mean-
was
what
a
the third.
significant period of time.
It
There was a
was
very
like,
significant period of time where Monogatari was the only deck that people were really playing at the top
Yeah.
tables.
Yeah, it was like
And that's
70% Monogatari. Yeah, there was a
Yeah.
time. There was like when it first came
Monogatari?
out, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Is that how it was
It's
at
very-
Hong Kong?
it's like
started. No, it wasn't.
Yeah,
No,
like
it wasn't
not
in Hong
only-
Kong. Not in Hong Kong, but in Japan it was.
Oh, okay.
Hong Kong was like
Think
40.
about- yeah.
Hong Kong was like 40% CG,
40%
40
Darren Moss,
Monogatari.
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then 20% everything else.
The thing about Monogatari is that like all card gamers have a playstyle, and a lot of the better card gamers like to think a lot. They don't like to trust everything to the heart of the cards and just go full on aggro. So Monogatari is the sort of deck that they want to play. And when a lot of good players want to play a deck, it will always be more represented. It will always appear better than it is. And that's the case in every card game. In Magic, you have lots of good players played like Esper Control, and that died off after every Pro Tour that it was big on, because that's not what the regular player plays. Monogatari is a very good set. It is very comfortable. You feel safe playing it, and you feel that you have a lot of control over everything. It's the same reason people like to play Triad Primus. It's the same reason why people like to play Tulavu Animal. And that's the reason why people don't like to play Puyo Puyo. They don't like to play Little Busters. These are decks that just go aggro. And these decks are not the decks that the better players will favor at the end of the day. And for that reason, Monogatari will always appear to be better than what I think it actually is.
Fair enough.
Don't get me wrong, it's a really, really good deck. It's a really good deck. It's just, the opinion is overinflated because so many good players are playing it because they like how it plays. That is certainly why it is overrepresented that much. It is certainly why it got such a high topping rate that it needed to be hit. And it's not even going to slow down at all because they haven't really stopped the deck from doing what it does, which is make the player feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Okay. Any quick closing thoughts before we finish up?
Screw both of those cards.
Tulavu is still unbanned, and it's still the best deck in the game.
Till over best. We're Trans House, right? For the record.
No, obviously not. Of course, it's the
Um,
Haruna build.
Well, I mean, like
Animal deck is
Lychee
maybe-
likes the animal
Animal
build.
deck is a clear contender. It is a clear contender for top 5 in game. I'm not even kidding. Like, it's a very good deck.
Next,
But
so
yeah, it's really good, and I recommend everyone plays it because it teaches you so much about deck control. But no, of course I mean Yami-Kan.
Right. Okay. All right, and yeah, there you guys have it. This has been the Monogatari series discussion, and I'd like to thank both Lychee and Rex for coming on and giving their thoughts. And there's pretty much nothing else to talk about. So, all right, see you guys next time. This has been Peshcats, and with top tier tiers, of course. And see you next time. Bye.
Misakuro's at 4.
Yeah, Misakuro's at 4. Rip the meme.